Have you ever been in a state where you just lost all hope? When it feels like your struggles and pain have consumed everything inside you? Tired, wondering if it's ever enough, if it'll get better, if there's even a reason to exist when the light at the end of the tunnel feels so distant, so faint, yet, even when that light seems impossible to reach, it doesn't mean it's completely dark. If you keep pushing forward, keep holding on to any ounces of faith that's left, then, as the author's note says, that ray of light can shine through any broken heart. Kagurabachi chapter 126 delivers an emotional, tragic, yet beautiful backstory to Kunishige Rokihira. Beyond the laid-back, clumsy, part-time goofball was a man with a past filled with serious conflicts, internal abuse, and Hokuzono continues to deepen the layers with the Seiti War by giving us more purpose, more reason to grow an attachment to these characters so that when it's all said and done, the fate of their lives becomes an even greater memory to love and cherish. Chiaki, what exactly happened to her? And when we know the answer, will it be enough to justify Akamura and the malediction? As Kunishige continues to work on smelting the Danseki, the flames of chapter 126 dives back into the past, his childhood, where we learn that Kunishige's quote-unquote special eyes were inherited from his father, as he was a swordsmith too. This is a really neat detail because it never came to my mind that the swordsmithing talents had started from before Kunishige. I thought Kunishige was like the first in the lineage to start swordsmithing, but it's possible that the Rokuhiras are just filled with swordsmith descendants, despite, I guess, not having a huge reputation. Regardless though, we know in the last chapter that the Rokuhira eyes are indeed special to some extent, right? Because their eyes can actively heal while it gets burned by extreme heat. You know, people with normal eyes, if they were to stare at encroaching flames for a long time, their eyes would get damaged or possibly become blind. So now learning that Kunishige inherited the eyes from his father, could this mean that the Rokuhira eyes are an actual inherited trait that's special to only them and their family? Or is it just the fact that they are swordsmith and it's a coincidence? Because there are a bunch of other swordsmiths in Japan that exist in the story, yet none were mentioned to have the same detailed, precise eyesight as the Rokuhiras. It was also stated in this chapter that Kunishige has more red in his eyes compared to his father, equating to a better affinity for seeing the flames. So all the times when it was mentioned that Chihiro has special eyes, it might be like his actual own inherited power, being a Rokuhira blood that, you know, has experienced swordsmithing. Continuing the backstory, unfortunately Kunishige's father, Chihiro's grandpa for that matter, was a deadbeat, often opening the liquor cabinet and abusing his own family. Tables, food, drinks, plates, and furniture seem to have constantly been destroyed in the Rokuhira household. A devastating panel of his mom, shown with the scars and damages received, tells her son to please not turn out like his father. Shortly after a while, Kunishige heard that his father passed away when his dead body was found at the forge because of a fight he got with a customer. He was a deadbeat dad, seemed to have liquor problems, so I wouldn't be surprised if he had like behavioral issues and really did die after a customer issue spiraled out of control. Regardless, the mom, after all she's been through and had to endure, was relieved knowing her husband had died, and for the young Kunishige, it was also his 9th birthday, and while he didn't have the time to fully process his dad's death, all he knew in his heart was that he wanted to stay by his mom's side. He blows the birthday cake and hopes for his wish to be granted, but of course, things don't always go as follows. Even in death, the mom's heart was still scarred by her husband's actions, and all the trauma, the suffering, it never went away. Because of all the abuse, she ended up losing sight completely in one eye and was barely able to see with the other. A panel of cans are displayed, having been opened and drunk, alluding to the notion that the mom had been drinking to, I guess, try and cope with everything. She had also lost her job, which meant that she and Kunishige had to rely on the remains of the dad's earnings in order to get by. Life seemed very rough at this point. Surely nothing can be worse, right? Well, eventually Kunishige's mom attempted to hurt her own son, looking at his eyes, putting pressure on them, realizing that she can't stand the resemblance of the man that hurt her the most. Kunishige was able to calm her down and escape, but not without any injuries. At some point, the bathtub in the washroom is filled. A note is left saying, "I'm sorry," as it's revealed that Kunishige's mom took her own life and drowned. At that young age, knowing that the person you wanted to protect and stay by your side died because of the very resemblance you carry, the resemblance of a man who failed to be a father. Shortly after his mom died, Kunishige stumbled upon kids like him, kids with their own problems, Shiba, Azami, and Chiaki. Even without a mom or dad, Kunishige didn't feel lonely anymore. He had his squad, his friends to keep each other's company and distract themselves from their own loneliness. Although 3 years later had gone by and Kunishige still remembers his past and trauma, for Shiba, Azami, and Chiaki, they've become important people to him within those 3 years, but Kunishige remembers a time when someone who he wanted to protect died because of him, and he's afraid if something like that were to happen to any of his friends just because he lives. As a 12-year-old, that's a crazy amount of guilt to carry, but also an even crazier amount of fear to be worried and afraid of. And so as he lays on the couch, he thinks and thinks that maybe things would have been better if he didn't exist. Now, maybe I'm interpreting this too extreme. You guys actually let me know in the comments if you thought this too after reading the chapter, but had Chiaki, his ray of light, not decided to check up on him and appear on his doorstep in this very moment, Kunishige would have probably had gone forth with his thoughts of, not wanting to exist. It's also heavily raining outside, and, rain can generally indicate sadness, depression, and of course, by the end of this chapter, the rain stops since Kunishige's quote-unquote sadness is gone, right? But I also wonder if the rain signifies anything else, like if it correlates to how Kunishige's mom died and gives more credence to how Kunishige himself could have wanted to die here too, because from what was given, it's implied that, again, Kunishige's mom drowned herself in the bathtub, and Hokuzono draws a close-up of a faucet to emphasize that thought. Now, right before Kunishige thinks about the possibility of not existing, we get panels of the droplets of rain outside splashing onto the ground, the panel of the faucet appearing again, and a panel of when the mom was in distress too. All to make me believe that, again, Chiaki, I think, really did save Kunishige that night. Hokuzono really does his panelings with a lot of intent, and even if you think it's still not enough for sure to say that Kunishige was, probably gonna die that night, I think the fact that Chiaki says to him, "I knew you were home alone," I started imagining the worst case scenario, then I just couldn't stand idly by and wait. So yeah, Chiaki being there for him, saving his life, and then when we get back to the Safety War flashback, it's now Kunishige trying to save her life with the whole Mikaboshi and war. My favorite moment of this chapter, however, was near the end. It's when Chiaki comes over and cooks food for Kunishige. The food she cooks looks very similar to the one that was splattered on the ground back when Kunishige's parents were fighting, and so he hesitates for a bit because he remembers that, but when he eats it, tears start dropping. Again, to talk about paneling, when Kunishige's mom died of drowning, Hokuzono drew a close-up of a droplet falling in front of a faucet, which looks like tears, I guess, and could imply that, maybe the mom died, I guess not maybe, because we know, the mom died unhappily and miserably. But when Kunishige cries, his tears are of joy, expressing how delicious the food is, and shortly after, the rain stops outside, as the chapter ends with both Kunishige and Chiaki playing around with the greatest boons summer can ever bestow.
So cute!
Wow. I feel like I say this in my head every time, but what an amazing chapter, and honestly probably up there as one of my favorites, because like I said in the beginning of the video, a chapter like this just gets us more attached to these characters, Kunishige, Chiaki, and it makes us love and cherish them even more because, we obviously know how their fate ends up in the future, at least for Kunishige. For Chiaki, we don't know the specifics yet, and that's what I'm really scared of because Hokuzono is making Chiaki to be such a beloved character so that when the malediction happens and if it does end up happening because the fate of Chiaki was, I don't know, the final trigger for Akamura to unleash his wrath, would there now be a measure to or of how justifiable Akamura's decision was? And I'm just so curious to see the moment that separated Kunishige and Akamura and how they felt about each other, knowing that Chiaki was both someone that they loved, knowing that Kunishige was the one who gave the Shinichi to Akamura since he trusted him the most, yet their stance on what's right and wrong after the war and with the enchanted blades are total opposites to each other. Little side note, but the fact that this chapter mentions how Kunishige, Shiba, Azami, and Chiaki are all kids with their own problems, and obviously we kind of know the origins with Chiaki, and now knowing Kunishige, I wonder if we're going to explore backstories of Shiba and Azami too. Man, I'm just so glad to have Kagurabachi back, and I can't wait to read more of the Seiti War arc. I mean, it really hasn't let down at all, especially with this chapter being not even a 10, like a 12 out of 10. Got me pretty emotional in the morning. But yeah, if you made it this far, my next video will be actually kind of a personal and vulnerable video explaining my 2-year absence on YouTube and everything else with the channel and myself going forward. So yeah, if you care about that, then stay tuned. But with all that being said, thank you so much for watching my Kagurabachi chapter review, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.